They fined James $500 for doing something unthinkable, parking his own truck in his own driveway. The violation? It supposedly clashed with the neighborhood's aesthetic standards. And standing across from him with a smug grin was Linda Thompson, the iron-fisted HOA president who treated the subdivision like her personal kingdom. But what Linda didn't realize was this: James Carter wasn't just any passive homeowner. He was a man of principle, and what began as a petty violation would uncover secrets that would shake the entire neighborhood. James Carter loved his peaceful suburban home, a modest single-story house with fresh white shutters and a creaky but comforting porch swing. His red Ford F-150, a symbol of years of hard work and memories, sat proudly in the driveway. For him, it wasn't just a truck. It had hauled camping gear, kids' bikes, furniture for charity. It was family. The morning began like any other. Autumn leaves rustled in the breeze, and the smell of brewing coffee lingered in the air. But the serenity shattered when James spotted a bright orange paper stuck to his windshield, fluttering in the wind like a slap to the face. Confused, he pulled it off and read the bold print: violation. Vehicle does not meet HMA aesthetic standards. What aesthetic standards? Perplexed and annoyed, James checked the HOA guidelines on his phone. Nothing mentioned driveway parking restrictions. As he stood by his truck, shaking his head, she arrived, Linda Thompson. Clipboard clutched like a weapon, eyes sharp behind her glasses, she approached with a practiced smile that barely hid her disdain. "Good morning, Mr. Carter," she said, sweet as syrup. James raised an eyebrow. "I saw the notice, but I don't see any rule saying I can't park in my own driveway." Linda's smile widened. "The board recently updated our guidelines. We sent out a memo last month. Surely you saw it." "I didn't receive anything," he replied calmly but firmly. "Well," she said with a mocking tilt of her head, "it's your responsibility to stay informed. The rule stands. That truck is an eyesore." James glanced at his polished, gleaming truck in disbelief. "Linda, this feels personal." "It's not," she said curtly. "It's about standards." And with that, she turned on her heel and strutted away, clipboard raised like she just issued a royal decree. James stood there, the violation notice crushed in his hand, a slow burn building in his chest. This wasn't over. By week's end, another envelope appeared, this one stamped with the HMA seal. Inside, a typed letter informed him that he was being fined $500 and warned that legal action would follow if the truck wasn't removed. That evening, James sat at his kitchen table, the letter spread before him. His wife placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "What are you going to do?" she asked, worry in her voice. He looked up, eyes determined. "I'm not giving in. If Linda wants a battle, she's got one." Outside, under the glow of the porch light, his truck waited, right where it had always been. James started asking around. Mrs. Avery, the sweet retired teacher next door, gave a heavy sigh when he mentioned Linda. "She fined me last Christmas for my string lights. Said they clashed with the community theme." Across the street, Mr. Coleman revealed he'd been fined for long grass, despite mowing weekly. Each story confirmed what James suspected. This wasn't about rules. This was about control. Late one night, James dug through every HOA document he could find. His garage became a war room, papers spread across his workbench, legal pads stacked high, the air filled with a faint scent of oil and determination. Then he found it, the so-called memo about parking restrictions. It had never gone through a community vote. Linda had pushed it through solo, bypassing procedure entirely. "She's acting like she owns the place," James muttered, grabbing his phone. It was time to lawyer up. But Linda wasn't finished. Saturday morning, James woke to the sound of a tow truck idling in his driveway. He rushed outside barefoot, heart pounding, and there she was, clipboard in hand. "Your truck violates emergency access regulations," she announced for all to hear. "It has to go." James stepped forward, planting himself in front of his truck, arms crossed. "No, you're not towing anything. This is my land." Neighbors emerged from their homes, phones raised. One by one, cameras pointed at Linda. James's wife captured every second of the standoff. "You're breaking a rule," Linda shrieked. "And you're breaking the law," James shot back. After a tense silence, the tow truck driver slowly reversed and drove away. Linda stormed off, furious and defeated. That night, the video of the confrontation went viral. People across the country watched as James stood firm against unjust HOA bullying. Comments poured in. Support flooded his inbox. And suddenly, James was more than just a homeowner, he was a symbol. He gathered his evidence, prepared his case, and walked into the courthouse with confidence. A navy blazer, a folder full of facts, and justice on his side. What started as a parking dispute became a full-scale battle for fairness, and James won. Linda was investigated, removed from her position, and her fines rescinded. James was reimbursed. And the neighborhood? It came alive again. Holiday lights returned. Lawns grew a little longer, and people smiled more freely. One evening, as the sun dipped low and James grilled burgers in the backyard, his wife leaned against him. Their kids laughed nearby, playing catch. "You did it," she whispered. James smiled, looking over at his red truck still parked in its rightful place. "No," he said, "we did." James Carter sat in a courtroom charged with a calm resolve that barely concealed the storm underneath. Across the aisle, Linda Thompson sat upright, flanked by two attorneys in sharp suits. Her signature-tailored blazer had replaced the clipboard she once used to issue neighborhood threats. Her smug grin said it all. She still thought she would win. The lawsuit brought by the HMA painted James as a rulebreaker, a so-called repeat offender who refused to respect neighborhood guidelines. But this wasn't just about parking anymore. This was about a system built on intimidation and unchecked power. And James wasn't here to surrender. He had countersued, demanding accountability for property rights violations and abuse of power. As the judge entered, stern, composed, and attentive, the room fell silent. Linda's attorney began with a polished narrative that made James sound like a problem homeowner. Linda sat nodding along, oozing confidence. But when James's lawyer, Daniel, rose, the energy in the room shifted. Daniel didn't need theatrics. He laid out cold, clear facts. The new parking rule hadn't followed the proper voting process, and James, as a homeowner, had every legal right to park on his own property. His tone was steady, firm, and respectful, yet every word hit like a hammer of truth. The real turning point came when Daniel presented the emails, leaked by a concerned HOA board member. They exposed Linda's backdoor tactics, skipping required community votes, faking meeting minutes, and pushing her personal agenda under the guise of policy. The courtroom grew tense. Linda's smile faded. Her lawyers exchanged glances. The judge read through the emails slowly, then looked up. "Ms. Thompson," she said, her voice sharp, "you implemented these rules without proper procedure. Your actions not only violated the bylaws, but they also betrayed the trust of this entire community." Linda tried to respond, but the murmurs in the room drowned her out. The residents watching had heard enough, and when the verdict came down, it was decisive. James was cleared of all violations. The HNA was ordered to reimburse him for legal fees. Linda Thompson was officially removed from her position as president. As the gavel struck, a quiet wave of relief and justice swept the room. James stood, his expression calm, but inside, his heart was light for the first time in months. Outside, the fall air was brisk and clear. James stepped onto the courthouse steps, where his wife and a group of neighbors waited. They welcomed him with warm smiles and hugs. For once, the small crowd wasn't fearful, but united. Linda slipped out the side door, head down, her power finally stripped away. She didn't speak a word. That evening, James's driveway, the spot that had sparked this entire war, glowed under the warm light of the porch. His red Ford F-150 stood in its usual place, proud and polished. But now it meant more than convenience. It was a symbol. Neighbors gathered around. There was no formal invitation, just the unspoken need to be together, to honor what James had done. "It's not just a truck anymore," James said, raising his voice just enough for everyone to hear. "It's a reminder that when we're pushed too far, we can fight back, and win." Applause broke out. Not polite, restrained clapping, but honest, heartfelt appreciation. Mrs. Avery, the retired schoolteacher fined for her holiday lights, placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did what the rest of us were afraid to do," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank you." The story didn't end on that street. The video of James standing up to Linda during the attempted towing had already gone viral. The courtroom verdict added fuel to the fire. News outlets picked up the story. Messages poured in from strangers sharing similar experiences, thanking James for his courage. "It's not just about a truck," James told a local reporter. It's about fairness. It's about knowing your rights and standing up when you're being pushed around. The HNA underwent a total overhaul. Transparent voting procedures were reinstated. Linda's replacement, Greg Parker, was calm, fair, and open. The community slowly healed. No more threats over mailbox paint. No more fines over Christmas lights. Just neighbors being neighbors again. Weeks later, as the sun dipped below the rooftops, James stood in his driveway watching his kids shoot hoops in the soft evening light. His wife came beside him, resting her hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. He looked at the red truck and then back at her. "No," he said softly, "we did it." Their neighborhood was no longer ruled by fear, but by unity, resilience, and fairness. James's stand had sparked more than justice. It had brought an entire community back to life.